Hello and welcome. While the Arab world deals with political upheaval, what's happening to the influence of the United States in the region? Critics say Washington's support of largely unelected leaders in the Middle East and North Africa has seriously hurt its credibility in the region. Now even the leaders of Algeria, Bahrain, Jordan and Yemen, all backed by the US, are facing angry demonstrations for political reform in their countries after witnessing the downfall of Tunisia's Zine Al Abidine Ben Ali and Egypt's Hosni Mubarak following public uprisings. Well, critics say that the White House's inability or unwillingness to firmly rally behind these protesters has raised questions about its commitment to freedom and democracy. But American officials say President Barack Obama's condemnation of Libya's violent crackdown on anti-government activists proves the US fully supports political change in the region. So today we ask, as the hunger for democracy sweeps across the Arab world, how much will the United States really matter to the region in the future? Remember, you can call in with your questions and comments, and we welcome your emails and text messages onto the show. Well, joining me now with a perspective on events from the US is well-known American conservative commentator, author and columnist Pat Buchanan. He was a senior advisor to 3 US presidents, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford and Ronald Reagan. Mr. Buchanan, great to have you back on the show.
Thank you very much.
So, tell them this time the Yanks are not coming, is what you wrote regarding the US intervention prospect in Libya. Why are you so against it?
I think this is the Libyan people's revolution. I think the United States does not have a vital interest there that would justify military intervention. I think a no-fly zone over Libya, we would have to begin with airstrikes. Those are acts of war. If you commit acts of war against Libya, I think you would have to win that war. Otherwise, you would just have wounded the snake, not killed it. And Mr. Gaddafi, as you know, the way he responds, should he survive, would be to take down American airliners. So what I say is, don't go in.
All sounds so logical. Why is it not resonating throughout the US administration?
Well, the administration, I think the Pentagon is very much against going in. We're overcommitted right now in Afghanistan and Iraq and Pakistan. I think Secretary Gates is against intervention. Where you're getting it is from the neoconservatives and Senator McCain and Senator Lieberman. But my view is, as of now, unless there is some horror perpetrated, some massacre that creates moral pressure in this country, that we will not intervene militarily. I do think we ought to be there helping those folks out who are trying to get into Tunisia, and I think we should try to bring about an end to this war, because a lot of people out there in those besieged towns, I think they're suffering greatly.
Right. What do you think, sir, would happen if the US fully committed to Libya, to some kind of support for the rebels there?
I think you'd have to win the war. And if the rebels couldn't succeed on their own, we would have to win the war for them, and that would mean an American intervention. We would have to see to it that the government that succeeded was more democratic and that the country succeeded. And quite frankly, we would have another Islamic Arab country on our hands. And quite frankly, we ought not to, because I think that would damage this country in that part of the world. I think the opposition to America's footprint, especially its military footprint in that part of the world, is one of the reasons for the hostility toward this country and its people in the Arab and Muslim world. And I think that profile should be diminished and that footprint should be reduced. And quite frankly, the United States should let many of these Arab and Islamic countries really find their own solutions.
Well, so when President Barack Obama spoke out about the unrest and fighting in Libya, he made it very clear that all possibilities are being considered. Here's what he had to say.
I want to send a very clear message to those who are around Colonel Gaddafi. It is their choice to make how they operate moving forward, and they will be held accountable for whatever violence continues to take place there. In the meantime, we've got NATO, as we speak, consulting in Brussels around a wide range of potential options, including potential military options, in response to the violence that continues to take place inside of Libya.
So I wonder, what if the US is dragged into a third campaign? Can it afford to even foot the bill? I mean, with the economic mess that we have here?
That's classic gunboat diplomacy there. What the president is saying, he's telling the men around Gaddafi, look, make a choice. Your future is secure if you do not participate in a massacre of the Libyan people or a continuation of this war. And I think the mention of NATO is just a suggestion that we're over the horizon. I don't believe the president wants to intervene militarily. We don't have the forces now. We don't have the forces there to intervene successfully. So I think he's basically rattling the saber, and he would like to see this ended. Can we afford another intervention and occupation? The answer to that is no. Secretary Gates, you may have heard him when he spoke at West Point. He said, any defense minister of this country who tells a future president we ought to get involved in a land war in Asia, the Middle East, or Africa ought to have his head examined, in the eloquent words of General Douglas MacArthur, who was one of my heroes.
Well, sir, we've got a caller on the line from California. James has been waiting patiently. Go ahead, James.
Hello, thank you for taking my call.
Pleasure.
First of all, I'd like to touch on what Mr. Buchanan had said about the neoconservatives. He had an excellent article for his American conservative publication titled Whose War, about how the neoconservatives pushed us into the Iraq quagmire to secure the realm for Israel. And now these same neoconservatives, Richard Pearl and company, are pushing us to go into Libya. And I wanted to ask Mr. Buchanan, could that be what our mutual friend Stephen Snagosky, who had written the Transparent Cabal book about those neoconservatives, are they trying to set us up for a confrontation with Iran? And it's very concerning. Go to my blog, america-hijack.com. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Right. Well, there's no doubt the neoconservatives would like the United States to launch a preemptive strike on Iran. They have failed to do that thus far. The neoconservatives are pushing for a no-fly zone over Libya. But as I said, once you start up that staircase, you've got to go all the way to the top, because you have to first take out their radars, their missile defenses, their air defenses, and you got to do that with bombs. And when you bomb a country, you're attacking it, and that's an act of war. But the neoconservatives, I do not know that they are going to succeed this time. I think the push toward a no-fly zone was stronger 10 days ago than it is now. And in the absence, as I said, of some kind of appalling atrocity on national television here, where the American people said, you know, we just cannot let this go on and the president's got to do something, I don't think he will intervene. I don't think he wants to intervene militarily. I do think a lot of the putting the ships off the shore is a message to Gaddafi: don't use those planes to massacre civilians, or you will force our hand.
Now, if it's a NATO-led, UN-sanctioned effort to create a no-fly zone, doesn't the U.S. then have a responsibility to
Well, NATO's not going to do anything we don't want to do, and the other NATO countries I don't think could carry off a no-fly zone and sustain it for any period of time without the United States. So I think this would have to be a decision of all three. And again, you've got Admiral Mullen, and you've got the Secretary of Defense, and you've got the folks in the Pentagon that would have to do that, who are saying, don't do this. We've got enough on the plate already. And quite frankly, we don't have a vital interest. I think personally, given what Colonel Gaddafi did at Lockerbie, I wrote the president's speech, incidentally, for Ronald Reagan with the attack on Libya, and one of the targets was Gaddafi himself, and then came Lockerbie. Given those things, I would like to see him defeated, but you cannot argue that we have a vital interest in who rules Libya. Gaddafi's been there 41 years, and if we had a vital interest in seeing that he be removed, he would have been removed a long time ago. So the interest is not vital to the United States. Quite frankly, I would like to see the Arab League do more. I would like to see the Europeans do more, not militarily, but really take up this problem as their own.
Well, sir, I get a call on the line from New Jersey.